Welcome to another edition of 310 to Left. Tom Caron from Nesson with you here. It's the off season. So what do? You watch the World Series, but that's the Yankees and the Dodgers. And if you're a Red Sox fan, it could be a little tough to watch at times. Or you think about what the Red Sox are going to do this offseason, but after 3 straight years without a playoff appearance, that might not be what you want to focus on just yet because we haven't even hit the free agency season yet. The hot stove hasn't even started. Well, thanks to Netflix, you can relive past glory. The Comeback, the 2004 Boston Red Sox, a 3-part documentary that was recently released on Netflix. It's got terrific interviews, behind-the-scene footage, and then, of course, some of the great moments in baseball history, the epic 7-game showdown between the Red Sox and the Yankees. But it's a really look at 2 seasons of Red Sox-Yankee drama, as Joe Buck, the announcer, recently told Chad Finn of the Boston Globe when he was asked if he missed doing the World Series. He said, "Well, I miss Red Sox-Yankees, that's for sure, because there was nothing like it 20 years ago." And Colin Barnicle, the director, he and his family were at Game 7 of 2003. And any of us who were there, as I was, know that loss, the Aaron Boone home run, left an indelible mark. But it also was the starting point to the greatest comeback in history, not just back from 3-0 in the 2004 ALCS against those same Yankees, but coming back from 86 years of frustration. It's a great take if you're a Red Sox fan, and I'm curious how it all came together. So we invited Colin Barnicle, the director of The Comeback, to join us. He's the guest on this edition of 310 to Left. All right, Colin Barnicle directed The Comeback, an incredible look back at the 2004 championship. Colin joins us now. Colin, how you doing?
I'm doing great. It's a good day.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I tweeted out a preview of the thing, and I immediately got some Yankee fan replying, "Yeah, it's 20 years ago, nobody cares." I was like, really, a Yankee fan is telling me not to pay attention to history? So it's still triggering for a lot of people. Congratulations on that.
Yeah, and it's, one of the things which is horrifying, we had to go back through it, is, and Yankee fans are right, it's not a rivalry, at the beginning of 2003, 2004. You can't lose for 85 years and then 86 years straight, and they've won 26, and we have a 0 there. Like if the Celtics last night had gone, on a 26-0 run, nobody would be like, "Oh, this is a rivalry with the Knicks." Like it doesn't happen, So anybody who wins 26-0, they have the right to say it's not a rivalry. And that's kind of like one of those things where it's like it bleeds into, the bitterness and the feeling like you're the middle child in the Yankees or the older brother who keeps pushing you back. And it did create some sort of animosity, not only with the players, but with the baseball operations and the ownership, which kind of like fueled them forward.
Yeah, it was the hammer and the nail, right? The nail didn't have a rivalry with the hammer. It just got hit by the hammer over and over. And that was the history of this. You mentioned generations, and I always tell a story when in 86, I had just started working in a small market in upstate New York and tried to call my family with the rotary phone with 2 strikes when the Red Sox were 1 strike away from winning the World Series in Game 6. And 3 times they were 1 strike away. 3 times I dialed all the numbers except for 1 and then hung up, right? Never made the call. And then they lost Buckner, and I had to go run out and be on TV in upstate New York. So when it happens in 04, I'm running out to the Nesson studio, and I've got my flip phone now, and I'm calling my family, the call we haven't had, right, that we talked about since 86. And I hang up, and my wife calls me with our 8-year-old son. So, you got a guy in his 80s, a guy in his 40s, and a guy in his who's 8. 3 generations in my family. None of us had ever seen a World Series win. And that was it, right? I mean, that was people 20 years ago. It's easy to forget. Like church bells rang. Red Sox caps were hung on gravestones. Like, "Now I can die in peace" was a real thing people thought.
Yeah, my dad, I remember my dad was he was at the 75 Game 7 when Tony Perez hit the home run off Bill Spaceman Lee. and I don't think he
Yeah,
ever
the eephus
forgave.
pitch.
Yeah, the eephus pitch. He never forgave him for that. And then he was at the '78 game. He was at the Buckner game in '86. We started to tell him that maybe he's the problem. He was at the '86 game, and then in 2003 when we lost, my little brother Tim was there, and he was only 10 at the time, and he collapsed crying after Boone rounded the bases. And my dad looked down at him and said, I can't believe I did this to you. Like he had given him something to love completely that didn't love him back. Now, Tim didn't have to wait that long. He only had to wait till he was 11. So, but my dad, he had to wait 50 years on this. And like I think my dad always says like, "Oh God, what could I have been if I just didn't go to Fenway Park for like 6 hours almost every day in the summer?"
Yeah, well, we'd probably all be better adjusted, but what fun would that be? Herb Brooks, right? The U.S. hockey coach said we play him 10
Yeah,
times, we might lose nine, but not tonight. Like, that's how it felt. It just felt once they won game four, when you started going back through it, were you right back there? Were you young Colin Barnicle watching these games all over again?
yeah, it was actually horrifying going through footage. Sometimes I would catch myself in the footage, and it wasn't just during the playoffs. It was like regular season September game, and it's like noon, and I'm there, and I'm like, I'm definitely in high school during this period. Like, why? It's like a Tuesday. I should probably be in school. But yeah, you're right back in it. And I remember Theo told us a story. Um, he was walking around New York before that game seven because he couldn't go to sleep, before 2004. He couldn't go to sleep, and he called Sam Kennedy to try to get Mike Eruzione's number and from the 1980 team. And he got it, and he put Mike Eruzione on with some of the Red Sox players before that game seven. And, Keith Foulke, huge hockey fan. It was like a big thing for a lot of those. Some of those guys were like, "Who's this?" But a lot of those guys were like, "This is unbelievable. This is the movie, right?" And they're like, "Well, it's not only a movie, but it actually happened in real life too."
This is a true story. So after we're doing the pregame show, Game Four in 2004, and we're on the street, Jersey Street, Yawkey Way then,
Mhm.
and it's dead, right? I mean, the Patriots had a 4 o'clock game. Everyone's in the bars watching the Patriots that day. Nobody's coming
Yeah,
out. Scalpers can't get rid of the tickets, and we're wrapping up the show. I think it was like a 5 o'clock game or something. It was a weird time. Maybe it
yeah,
was that. No, I guess that was the night game. The next day was the other one. Anyway, we're wrapping up the show, and I look out of the corner of my eye, and walking by off stage is Sean Astin, the actor, who was Rudy,
yeah,
right? And
yeah,
and we're just about to wrap it up, and I hit mute, and I yell over to him. I was like, hey, Sean Astin. He looks up at me. He's like, you want to come up? He's like, yeah. So we got him to come up, and he gives the Rudy speech, and the crowd's going crazy around. What crowd there is, right? It's like 40 degenerates hanging around our stage.
yeah,
But it was great because that was before they had won a game, and it was just that
yeah,
whole, like, that was who we were then. It's so different now. I mean, it really is. It's great that this is the Boston age of sports, right? The golden age of Boston
yeah,
sports. And you got Celtics just hung a banner and they win all the time. But back then, the whole thing about believing was that you had no reason to think it was ever going to come out well. But you still
no,
believe this might be the year.
yeah. I remember being at Game Three, 2004, when we lost 19-8, and we were there in the ninth inning, and it was very depressing, and there was nobody in the stands, and this drunk guy had come down from matriculated down from the bleachers, and he was sitting behind us, and he just started to yell out, "Are you ready for the greatest comeback in history?" And everybody was like, "Dude, just stop talking. Just stop it." And I hope that guy went out and bought a lottery ticket or something. We tried to find him, actually. We went through all the footage to see if we could hear like him yelling because it was so quiet in the stadium in the ninth inning. And we were like, we got to find this guy. And we never could. But I hope he's a millionaire now and won the lotto.
See, now the other side of that is, and rest his soul. Game four, the Red Sox win, and we're running into the studio, right? And I'm with Jerry Remy, And
Mhm.
I'll never forget Jerry's reaction is, oh, they're not going to win 4 in a row. Can't we just get on with it? Like, why are they extending our misery? Right? That
Yeah.
was how a lot of us felt after the first. It was the game, game 5 when you won game 5, and now it was going back to New York. I remember that was sort of when we're like, all right, wait a minute now. But that first win, you were like, oh, come on. They're just finding another way. It was Lucy getting ready to pull the football away from Charlie Brown again, right? They were just always finding a way to break your heart.
Yeah, I've never been more depressed and then elated in a hour span than Game 5, where we went into extra innings and we didn't score in the ninth. And I just thought, they're going to hit a home run. A-Rod's going to go deep. We're not going to respond in the bottom half of it, and we're going to have to watch him celebrate on the field. And then, it gets later and later and later. The tension keeps building, and then finally Ortiz steps up. But yeah, I don't think I've ever been as down and then as up as I was in an hour span. And I've had 4 children, so I should be, but it still hasn't happened.
Yeah. All right. So it came together 3 parts. When it's all said and done, and you finally get to sit back and watch, what are you happiest with? Well, when you set out to do a massive project like this,
Yeah.
and now it's out there in the world, right? The baby is
Mhm.
born, or all 3 of them. You had triplets. Congratulations. But how do you look at it now as the guy who went through the whole process?
Yeah, I remember after interviewing Timlin, because I worked in the clubhouse in 2007, so I knew Tim Wakefield a little bit, and he treated everybody the same. I could have been the DH on the team. He would have, that's how he treated me. He was incredibly nice to me, and I remember talking to Timlin after the interview, and I was like, I felt a huge responsibility to get that piece of the story correct. Tim Wakefield's part of the story correct. So when I watch it, I think I'm most proud of that part where, you know, the players are kind of reminiscing, especially Jason Varitek, about Wake. That's what I'm most proudest of. And then some of the more other stuff, I just love the Clemens Pedro stuff in the first episode. That to me was like, I'm seeing my 8-year-old self, and then I'm seeing my 17-year-old self meet, and they're arguing again about who's the greatest living Red Sox pitcher. So I love that part, and I love the Tim Wakefield sections.
Now, you should be proud of all of it. It really was a terrific watch. And anybody who loves baseball, certainly anybody who loves the Red Sox, got to check it out. Colin, we appreciate the time. Thanks for dropping by.
No, you're a legend. This is amazing for me.
Well, yeah, it's great when you do the story on Nesson. We'll tell you some stories then. But it really was great. You know what? Here's what I said too. I remember real quickly. I was saying goodbye, but I sat down to
Yeah.
watch it, and I was talking to a producer at Nesson, and I was like, I'm going to sit down and watch it. And he goes, "What are you looking for?" I said, "I don't know, because like you, right? Going into the story, everything about
Yeah.
it, but."
Yeah.
And I was like, well, is this just going to be like, okay, I'm reliving a tale? And it really was. The pacing of it was fantastic. The behind the scenes stuff, back to the game highlights. Like, there's a lot of ways you can go to build
Yeah.
something like this, right? So you got to feel good about the way it came out.
Yeah, it was. I mean, again, I'll give a lot. We had started the project right after Wake had passed, and I feel like a lot of the story and that culture really became present in a lot more of the people's minds that we interviewed, and that comes across in their interviews. They're really experiencing it again, like they're nervous again or they're mad again in Game 7. And
Yeah.
that really comes across, and it was really great, and it was like all the interviews were very candid, like more candid than I think. You're interviewing somebody on camera, you're like, okay, this is going to be a couple softball answers he gives, but I would prepare for the softball answer, and then you have to move somewhere else, and I never had to move. They would just answer completely candidly. I'd be like, oh, okay, this has to be in, this has to be in. And that's kind of how we doubled the amount of time we were doing, is because we were trying to get it all in.
Well, I'm glad you did, because any shorter wouldn't have given it the respect it
Yeah, yeah.
deserves. Again, Colin, we appreciate the visit. Let's do it again. It was a lot of fun. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Very cool to hear from Colin about how it all came together. Obviously, not an easy task. So many interviews, hours and hours of footage, both from games and behind the scenes, like we talked about. Really is an impressive 3 episode documentary looking back at what says on the side of the championship rings that were given to that team, the greatest comeback in history. Certainly wasn't baseball. First team ever to come back from a 3-0 deficit in a best-of-7 series. And in recent weeks, we've had a lot of members from that 2004 group come on the podcast. The closer, Keith Foulke, David Ortiz, who was Mr. Clutch that October and really cemented his legacy, which then continued for years. First of 3 championships he would win with the Red Sox. And the guy who somehow kept that clubhouse all together, Terry Francona, who managed that team and managed through the mayhem in the clubhouse to get the team to stay focused on the field. They all joined us. And we did not just ask them about 2004. We asked them about the documentary and their part in it and what they came away feeling about it and how it took them back to that incredible October 20 years ago. Ortiz hits the home run, you win that series, you wait around a couple of days, you find out it's going to be the Yankees. You know, a year ago, you had been sitting home watching Red Sox Yankees in the ALCS. Yeah. You get another crack at them. What was going through your mind going into the season? It really was kind of what you envisioned that prior winter, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean it's inevitable. You know, it's going to be Yankees Red Sox in the championship series to see who moves on, and I think we kind of got hit in the mouth really early. You know, it's like, holy cow, okay, you lose game 1, no big deal. All right, game 2, you know what? We've won 3 games in a row before, and all of a sudden, you know, the butt whip, and we took game 3. It was like, again, really, you know, and it got to a point where when game 3 went down, we get in the clubhouse, it's really quiet, you know, but it was like, it almost took the pressure off because it's either you lose and you go home, or you fight and you win, you come back the next day. And all of a sudden it's like, you know, forget it. Let's go out there, have fun. Let's play our game and see what happens, you know, and it's very, you know, a lot of the guys have said it and it's very well publicized, but, you know, the guys in that clubhouse, we never quit. You know, we didn't think, oh, we're going to come back and win the next 4. You know what? Come out tomorrow. Let's play good ball and let's see what happens.
Game 4, we're sitting out on the street doing the pregame show. And I think the Patriots had like a 4:00 game, and it's dead. I mean, there's not a soul outside the ballpark. Everyone's in the bars watching the Patriots. Scalpers are trying to get rid of the tickets to Game 4 of the series. Like, there is not a person outside that clubhouse who believes you can get it done. And I know, you look back now because you did it. But going into that game 4, and you had a great performance that night that let it keep going. But can you remember, like you just said, you guys kind of had a what the hell, why not us? Let's just go out there and do it. But can you remember what it was like getting there and being out there before that game? Because I'm telling you, man, from the outside looking in, it was about as desolate as Fenway Park has ever been.
Yeah. And honestly, as a player, it really was. The pressure was off. You know, because like I said, you're going to be home, you know, laying by the pool in 3 days, you know, or you're going to be continuing to play. So it's like there was nothing to lose for us, you know. Obviously I say that, but, you know, it really was. It took the pressure off us. We went back to having fun, you know. Some of the breaks started to go our way. And, you know, it's one of those things. You go out there and you play smart ball, don't make mistakes, good pitching, you know, and good things happened. And fortunately, the tide started to turn for us and the pressure started to be on them. And they're the ones that started making the mistakes.
2 2/3 innings from you that night. And there's no margin for error. I mean, you're talking about, right? Every pitch is basically with the season on the line. How gassed were you? I mean, it was the first of 3 consecutive days you pitched. So clearly you weren't too gassed. But what was it like coming out of that game? I mean, you did the job. You wind up moving on and winning to fight another day. How'd you feel after that game 4?
Yeah, after game 4 wasn't that bad, you know, because I had the previous day off, so I was fresh and ready to go. 5 was good. Now game 6 was a different story. Game 6, I was running on fumes, and that's one of those days where I was really proud of myself because I had to dig deep for that. It's like, I want this. The city wants it. I was doing it for my team. We had fought hard to get to that point, and I'm like, come on, kid, make a good pitch, make a good pitch, just one pitch at a time, make a good pitch. We made it interesting, but, in the end, it got it done.
Because of the rainout, it winds up being the rainout prior to that stretch. You wind up having 3 straight nights, including 2 in Fenway, 1 in New York. You threw 100 pitches over those 3 nights. I guess it comes out to what, 4 innings, 5, right? 5 scoreless innings when you put it all together. Was there ever a point? I mean, I know you and I know your personality, and I know the answer is no, that you were never going to say I can't go tonight. But was there concern around you? Like, was Francona worried you might not be able to go the 3rd night?
I don't think he ever asked, and our relationship was good enough right there. It's like, don't ask. The answer is always yes. I mean, it's a kind of a do or die situation. Like, I'll take that ball. I'd have thrown another 10 innings if I had to, because like I said, that's we wanted it. We wanted it. We were there for that, and there was no way that I was going to be told no.
For me, it was after Game 5 when you were going back to New York. I said, you know what? They might pull this off. And I know, like you said before, that the pressure was gone, and going into Game 4, you had nothing to lose, right? Because the next loss, it was over. Okay. When did it occur to you, you might actually pull this off?
Oh, definitely after Game 5. Game 5 was, like I said, we're going back to New York. This is exactly what we wanted. We backed ourselves in the corner. We were starting to kind of jab our way out, and we knew it's like, hey, we got this, And sometimes I think playing on the road is easier. Like, I think Curt Schilling's the one that said, hey, there's nothing better than having 55,000 people boo you. And I agree. I love, I learned to love the negative attention. When people are booing you, that means you're doing something right. And so it's, once we got back there for Game 5 and we were able to pull that out, Game 6 was a little bit of a grind, but, still we nose to the grindstone. Let's get after it. Let's do this.
You got through Game 6. Johnny Damon kind of took the drama out of Game 7 pretty quickly. How happy were you that this wasn't a 1-run nail biter in the ninth?
I was, I'm sure Johnny was happy. I was pretty happy myself. Although, after it was all said and done, I remember running in from the bullpen. The first person I went in to find was Tito. And I was like, Tito, hey, I should have been the guy on the mound right there. I earned it. I wanted that. And I just remember him looking at me. He goes, kid, you're going to get your chance. So, went off and celebrated, and he was right.
That's incredible. How strange was it to have that celebration on the field at Yankee Stadium? Or was that just a beautiful thing for you guys?
It was a beautiful thing, but it was short. I mean, it's not like we stayed there all night and just rubbed it in. It's like, we did it. Let's enjoy this moment. Let's get our trophy, do all your things, right? We still got a job to do. And, I think ultimately that Yankee series prepared us for the World Series, obviously. But it's like, don't take anything for granted. Foot on the gas from pitch one, and let's go get it done.
It's hard to talk about all this without thinking of Tim Wakefield, right? Who we were all so close to. And his performance in Game 3 in so many ways set up what you guys were able to do over those 4 nights in October. Just talk a little about, what he did and what he meant to you guys and how much we miss him now.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, what he did for that team, try and do this without breaking up, but I mean, he was the backbone. He was the heavy. He was the guy we all went to if you had questions. He was the guy on the plane to start bitching at somebody if things weren't well. It didn't matter if it's a rookie, if it's a veteran, whatever. He was the backbone of that team. But what he did in Game 3, I mean, he saved us. If who knows who would have had to pitch to get us through that 9 inning. There's no mercy rule. You got to get your outs one way or the other. And what he did basically saved the rest of the bullpen, to keep gas in the tank for the next few games. And, he's, he'll never be forgotten. And, he was the heavy, he was our boy.
All right. You're going to be all over Fox this weekend. You're all over Netflix too, because the new series, The Comeback, just came out, the documentary. Does it feel like it's been 20 years? I feel sometimes it feels like it was 100 years ago, and sometimes it feels like it was yesterday. How'd we get this old, Poppy?
Well, uh, to be honest with you, it feels like it was yesterday. Um, Everything had changed so much, high quality wise, that it seems like it's been a while. You know what I'm saying? So uh, even the style on players had changed. Like I have been watching all these kids celebrating the playoff, taking the shirt off, and this and that. Like, man, I can't even stand the cold champagne on my body, wearing my shirt. Think about being shirtless. I mean, everything has changed. Like me and Dad, we look around, we be like, man, what is going on in baseball nowadays? All these kids are celebrating with no shirt. Like, what is happening? But that's the new thing, man. And yes, I mean, it seems like it was yesterday because um, you can I basically can remember everything that happened during those celebrations and those times, you know what I'm saying? But uh, I have been getting a lot of feedback from people that have been watching it, and man, it's incredible.
David, what do you remember most? I mean, you had those great clutch moments, the walk-off moments, but when you think about that entire playoff run, how improbable it was, down 3-0 to the Yankees. No one's ever done that. When you think back to it, what do you remember the most?
Well, one thing I never forget is about it is it was Millar basically telling all the Yankees players during batting practice, don't let us win one. Don't let us. He used to go around. He used to go around and tell everybody, don't let us win one. And then I remember him telling A-Rod, hey man, after we won the first one, he say, hey man, why don't you let us win another one for television?
That's good for ratings.
But let me tell you, man, I mean, we were hungry. We were, we had the attitude, we had the craziness we have. Once you get to be all in three, you are against the wall. You have you have nowhere to go. All you gotta do is attend to win one after the other one, and that's what we did. And but the attitude and the body language were there. Even after we won the first one, it was like wow, and having the fans behind us, you know, I always say that New England had the best fan base out of everybody, and now that I'm covering this playoffs thing, I can see like I see the LA Dodger fans. Wow, incredible. Uh, they are hungry for winning a World Series, and New England were back in our days, and when we were playing out there, and as a player, when you see that, you just want to get the best of the best, and that helped us to move on and win the World Series.
When you guys came back on the bus, right? You flew back from St. Louis. You guys got on the bus. You came in 7 a.m. I don't think anybody in Boston had slept that night, right? The whole city was still awake all night. And there were Red Sox hats on gravestones already. When did it hit you how much this meant to the people of Boston?
Right there, nobody sleep that night. Nobody give up on us. Nobody walk away from hoping that we win a World Series. And we did it, and it was the biggest celebration I had ever been part of. It was millions and millions of people on that parade celebrating. I mean, the joy was incredible. I mean, I never forget that on that parade how people were going nuts during that celebration. It was insane.
4 million people at the parade that day. Unbelievable. You can relive it all in the comeback on Netflix. By the way, I know you're going to be with A-Rod and Jeter, and I know the anniversary of beating the Yankees already came back, but Sunday you can wish them a happy anniversary because that's when you won the World Series, all right? You tell them everybody from Boston wishes them a happy anniversary, all right?
Ta-da! I
Hey,
always, I
Poppy.
always, I always give them some. I always talk to them about it. I always give them a hard time. They be like, "Gang."
Oh, I think they'll be showing some clips on Fox. I don't think there's any doubt about that. We got to see those highlights
That's
again.
right.
So this past week, the documentary came out on Netflix, right? The 2004, the comeback, the look back at the Red Sox. And you had a great line in that at one point where you just basically said, I am at peace in shorts and a t-shirt, in an office, in the clubhouse, talking baseball with the guys. Like when you boil everything else away, is that what it's all about? Is that where your passion is?
TC, I don't remember saying that. I don't. The Barnacle boys were out here, and they better make a good Netflix thing because they were here all day. You know what? That's where I'm comfortable, TC. Like, I that was one of the things I missed was going to the ballpark. Throwing on your shorts, putting on your flip flops, and trying to figure out how we're going to beat somebody's ass. And that to me is really fun. But and let me take
that
a step.
hasn't changed, right? But that hasn't changed, right? The players change. But you've been able to stay connected to a younger generation of player because that ultimately is the foundation of the entire thing.
Well, I do think I make up for my age with probably a lot of immaturity, which I know. I just, the last couple years in Cleveland, I couldn't do that to the point where, I was on, you guys saw me, I was on a walking boot for a year and a half. I had all kinds of physical things going on, and it just didn't allow me to do the things that I enjoyed. And like I said, then you start getting short on patience. You snap at people. That's not what I wanted to do. And it's a hard thing to say that, hey, you need to step away. And for all intents and purposes, I thought I was stepping away for good. I really meant that. I left the door open because I know how my brain works, but I kind of thought I was done, and I was okay with that. I had thought it through pretty thoroughly.
So we do bring up 2004 and the fact that you've been, mulling over it with the Barnacles, and that this documentary is coming out. So 20 years since that kind of remarkable run. How did it change your life, and how did it change? How did it change you as a manager to have gone through that?
Well, Alex, the first thing I would say is it probably allowed me to continue managing the Red Sox because, I kind of knew the lay of the land. And, when we're down 3-0, I remember thinking this isn't good. This isn't going to end well. But, it's funny how things work. I think the way I've said it is probably appropriate the way we won. All the years people thought they were going to win and it somehow eluded them. Then when people kind of almost threw in the towel, like we have no chance, for us to come back and win that way, that was probably the perfect way to do it.
It's super interesting to think about, like, as you talk about the comfort level that you were experiencing with the Cincinnati guys, and that you had that fit with the Cleveland guys. I mean, what you were walking into in Boston was insane, right? Like when you think about the circumstances of you're jumping into a team that just got knocked out in Game 7, like 86 years of of heartbreak, on top of which you have like these massive superstars, all of whom are sitting on the cusp of free agency with questions about their future. Like, at the time, did it seem like it's something insane that you were going into? And how different is it now looking back on what you were walking into?
It's a really good question. I think I was so naive coming into it, and I think it actually helped me. I remember showing up the first day of spring training, and Manny was telling everybody the Red Sox had put him on eBay, and and he didn't want to attend the first meeting we had. I mean, I got indoctrinated right from the first day. But I will say, I was coming up to Boston probably every other week for a couple months while they were hiring me. And I guess I was semi-interviewing still. I don't even know how to put it, but the one thing I noticed early on was Theo was the smartest guy in the room. And I don't say that sarcastically. And you better try to keep up with him. And I say that like complimentary. I mean, this guy could do 10 things at once. I had never seen that, and like I said, you better try to keep up. But like in the winter meetings and things, he would come back to the suite and he'd have 10 things going at once. And I'd be like, whoa, and that's just how his brain worked. And I knew I was around somebody that was going to figure out a way to get it done. And that's why when he went to Chicago and everybody would ask me, hey, what do you think? My answer was always the same. He was too hardworking and he was too smart not to build a winner. And he did.
The crazy thing, Tito, is this is the story of the 2004 Red Sox World Series championship. Okay, it's a 3-part series. I don't think you're in episode 1 because episode 1 is about '03 and 86 years. And it was almost a reminder that even the documentary has to begin with the weight of the history of the Boston Red Sox, right? That's what you were coming into. When you first came into that, like, how did you get your head around it? How did you compartmentalize it? How did you make sure that you weren't going to get crushed by the weight of that history?
TC, I can remember I was down at Georgetown speaking to their at a baseball event for their coach. The guy's name was Pete Wilk at the time. And Mike Barnicle was there with one of his sons. And he walked up to me, and this is, I think, the day after the meltdown in New York. And from my point of view, from an outsider, I had been in Oakland. You guys had just beat us to advance. And I remember thinking, I watched Grady's interview after. I'm like, man, he handled that pretty well. And, I'd lived with Grady in the fall league. And I was like, he handled that well. And little did I understand how Boston worked. And Mike looked at me and he said, you know what? He goes, you're going to be the next manager of the Red Sox. And I looked at him like he had 3 heads. and about 10 days later, I was interviewing. And from there, things kind of happened fast. But I fall back on being a little naive, I think really helped me. I didn't feel the weight of the world. After I moved there a couple years later, and you're part of the community, I started to see it more and actually kind of became tougher because you're part of it. And I saw firsthand how these people felt about their team.
It's addressed in the documentary, but we tend to think of July 24th, the Tech A-Rod moment, the trade deadline, the Nomar, like that was it. The next day you didn't lose another game, but you actually kind of struggled for the next few weeks. It didn't happen overnight. You were still trying to get that team to reach its potential almost all the way into September, weren't you?
You're right. Everybody points to that fight with, and again, you're trying desperately to find your personality as a team. And I do think that helped. But like you said, Theo made those trades at the deadline, which we needed to do. We weren't defensively, we weren't good enough. And then when he made those trades, I'd say like 10 days later, things started to gel. And from about the middle of August to the end, I mean, we were rolling. That's what was so difficult was, we beat a really good Angels team and we swept them. And then before you can even take a deep breath, we're down 0-3. And it's like, no, this shouldn't happen. We're too good. But that's the way the game is. And it's kind of crazy. But, we had a team that could thump. We had really good pitching. But then when we made the trades, it allowed us to defend, especially later in the game, way better than we had the first 3 months.
So there you have it. Yeah, obviously, I was working at NESN. So much of that documentary begins with 2003 and the incredible 7-game series between the Red Sox and Yankees, the Aaron Boone home run off Tim Wakefield in extra innings in Game 7 in the Bronx, the old Yankee Stadium shaking. I was there as the sideline reporter, and it was incredible to witness that as a lifelong Red Sox fan. And then to go down into the visitors' clubhouse and have to interview players moments after that. And as part of the NESN crew, actually get on the team charter and fly back to Boston with the most devastated collection of professional athletes I had ever been around. It was just such a low point in Boston sports, in Red Sox history. And for them to come back 12 months later, be back at Yankee Stadium, winning Game 7, and going on to what would be their first World Series championship in 86 years. And as I've said, in the Caron family, 3 generations. My dad born in 1921, me born in the 60s, my son born in the 90s, and all 3 of us celebrating our first ever World Series celebration for the Red Sox. That's the way it was in 2004, as generations celebrated together. And it was a party that lasted long after the ball came back to Foulke, because Red Sox fans, as Joe Buck had said, had longed to hear it. Or as Joe Castiglione said, can you believe it? And it's still hard to believe, even looking at it 20 years later. Well, we hope you've enjoyed this little trip down memory lane, looking at the 2004 team and the new documentary on Netflix, The Comeback, the 2004 Boston Red Sox. And thanks to Colin Barnicle for coming on and telling us a little about putting it all together. And as always, thanks you for checking out this edition of 310 to Left. I'm Tom Caron. We'll see you again next time.